It's been over 3 years since I started working on my first full game, and while there's still a lot I don't know about making games, what I can say for sure is that it's been a long journey with plenty of ups and downs. What started as a single level with no textures and minimal mechanics has now become the game that I imagined when I first started developing it. There's still a lot to do before it's finished, but I've now reached a point where I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I wanted to look at where the game is now and what I've learned as a game developer throughout this journey. For anyone new here, or those that have forgotten, I'm Alex, a game developer working on Dreadwinter, a cozy fantasy coffee shop sim. The concept I had when I came up with it was to create a game that gave you freedom in how you played, whether that's focusing on making money or taking a more laid back approach. With a lot of management and simulation games, the general goal is to earn money or resources to gain access to ways of generating more in a constant cycle. It's not like there aren't games where the focus is on doing things at your own pace, but what I wanted to create is a game where playing fast or slow are equally viable, and choosing to run your cafe as a small independent coffee shop is no better or worse than going down the route of a global coffee chain. I also liked the idea of being a barista by day and adventurer by night, so I wanted to have the ability to explore the world and battle your way through dungeons. It's a lot of hats for a game to wear, and while I don't regret going in this direction, it's definitely been a lot more work than I was expecting when I started. Like a lot of new developers, I really underestimated just how much work goes into making a game, even for a comparatively simple one like mine, and it's only now that I'm in a position that I can start to think about what the final product will look like. I've talked about the development of Dreadwinter in my previous videos, so I won't bore you with the details, but to give some context for the rest of this video, let's do a quick summary. The first year of development consisted of figuring out how to make the game I had in mind, and building the core systems around it, such as being able to control the player and creating the cafe gameplay loop, and I wasn't really thinking about how the full game was going to work. At this point, making games was something that was new and exciting, so despite the game not being that great, I was enjoying working on it and bringing life to my vision. The second year was focused on expanding the game and adding new gameplay features, like decorating your cafe, setting up a coffee farm, and having places to explore. I released a demo for the game around this point, but I realised that it was nowhere near what I wanted to make. I was in a rush to prove that I had something worth working on, and I ended up losing sight of what exactly I wanted to make and why I was making it, which resulted in a lot of burnout throughout the year. The third year of development was a lot better, and to me is when Dreadwinter really started to move forward. I spent a lot of time reworking and improving the game to get it to a point that I was happy with. I released an updated demo, got a lot of feedback from players, had a few YouTubers play or mention the game, and even got some publisher offers. I wouldn't say that any of this led to huge growth, but it was nice to know that some people were starting to pay attention. This takes us to the fourth year and the present day, so let's talk about the game itself and the state it's in now. In Dreadwinter, you're put in charge of a cafe with the same name, as you start to rebuild your life and figure out what your real ambitions are. The initial gameplay loop is quite simple. Customers walk in, you brew coffee, and serve it to them. What I want the standout part of the game to be is where the gameplay develops from this initial loop. Over time, you build up interest, which brings in more customers. Eventually, you'll need to upgrade your machines and start automating to keep up with demand, which starts with buying an automatic coffee grinder and ends with mechanical demon servants that make and serve the coffee for you. You can also choose to take things slow and make everything by hand. It takes a bit longer, and not every customer will be willing to wait that long, but you have the potential to make high quality drinks that machines can't replicate. This builds up loyalty with your customers, which makes them more willing to wait, and can lead to your regular customers who visit each week, doing favours for you, eliminating the need to earn money to unlock new features. If you work really hard, you could balance both, but my aim is to be able to have multiple playthroughs and try different methods, so they're intended to be separate playstyles. There's also the option of joining the Adventurers Guild and making your living by taking on quests and clearing dungeons. This was originally going to be a third way of playing the game, where you could acquire loot that would help you develop the cafe, but from how players approach it, it seems to work best as a side activity to add variety to the game. Looking back at how the game was when I made my 2-year progress video, funnily enough, I don't really think that the game has expanded that much, although by now a lot of the things I said I wanted to add back then have been done. You can now expand the cafe and set up a bakery in the back and sell desserts, and even little things like reading books and taking a bath have been added. The town of Lunara, where the game takes place, and all of the key characters have been fully integrated into the world, and I've even added a little extra on top, like a bookstore where you can buy recipe books to expand your menu. What's most noticeable though is probably the overall quality taking a leap forwards, at least by my standards. The art has been cleaned up, a lot of old systems have been reworked, and there's been a lot of quality of life changes, such as improved tutorials, adjustable day length, interaction highlighting and improved detection, as well as the ability to save and load at any time. Some of these are quite common and obvious features to have, but as a new developer I was solely focused on bringing my ideas to life, and how players would think about and approach the game was something that never crossed my mind, because there wasn't a game to play yet. Now that the game is at a point where people can try it out, and the reality of the full release gets closer, I inevitably end up thinking about things like player attention and getting them hooked within the first hour. It's something that's necessary to create a good and successful game, but at times it does feel like I'm neglecting the creative side of the process. Personally, I want to create a game with depth that rewards the players that are invested and put tens or hundreds of hours in. You obviously need to get players interested enough to be willing to put that time and effort in, but it's easy to end up tunneling in on the first impression and forgetting about the rest of the game. An example of the kind of game I want to make is in the vein of Kingdom Hearts 358 over 2 days. It was released over 15 years ago, and the gameplay was considered tedious even back then, but I like the world and characters enough to play to the end, and I still occasionally think about it. I'm not saying that I want my game to be tedious, but I want it to be a game where people will get invested in the world itself, and will think about it years after they've stopped playing. Ultimately, to make a living from making games, you do need it to sell well to some degree, and one of the main things I've started to focus on is finding the balance between making something that will sell, without losing sight of what I want to achieve with Dreadwinter. There's a lot of external pressure and expectations for this to be a moneymaker, but for me, the biggest growth I've had as a developer is recognizing that it's not what my goal is at this point. With it being my first game, I've learned a lot and made a load of mistakes, so I can accept that it likely isn't going to be the best it could be. At the very least, I want to make a game that I can be proud of, and I think with the experience I have now, the next game will be a lot better, so I'd be happy with doing enough to be able to work on another one. Before thinking about the next game though, I still need to finish my current one, so let's go over my plans for completion. There's still some cleaning up to do feature-wise, but it's mostly integrating existing features into the game, like making the coffee farm unlockable, and I say that Dreadwinter is now at a point where most of what needs to be done is adding the rest of the content to the game. Let's say there's around 2 to 3 hours of content right now. The goal is to add the remaining 50 hours. These are things like dialogues, cutscenes and events, as well as more recipes and decorations for the cafe. There isn't a set amount to make, so it's hard to estimate how long it will take, but it's a matter of adding as much as I can think of. There's some content that is very likely to be cut, such as the aquarium, since there's a lot of work for an extra area, but I do want to have it in the game, so anything that gets cut, or any additional ideas I have, will be added in content updates after release. I'm also now working on the main story, which is something I've been looking forward to for a long time. One of the things I enjoy most about working on Dreadwinter is writing silly dialogue and interactions, and it gives me a lot of satisfaction when people like the things I came up with, so being able to flesh out the rest of the world is one of my biggest goals at this point. Besides that, expanding the combat by adding more cards, enemies and dungeons, as well as creating the full soundtrack, should be the remaining tasks. They say the last 10% of any project is the hardest, and it does feel that way sometimes. A lot of how this progresses is dependent on whether I have the inspiration at the time, so it's quite unpredictable. My earliest prediction for release would be somewhere around the middle of the year, but I think that would require everything to go right, which, as any developer knows, is never going to happen. I'll have a more concrete timeline further along in the year, but that's my estimate for now. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe, give Dreadwinter a wishlist, and thanks for watching.